jump right in. Mike, I want to learn all about Lace 'em Up Sports, but we're all wrestling fans, so we naturally got to talk about wrestling. So
Yeah.
tell me about Lace 'em Up Sports first.
Well, Lace 'em Up Sports is my baby. I mean, it basically I came up with the idea because I would always go to bars and I would always talk about sports with friends. And we'd always have these deep, passionate conversations about sports. And one day I was like, I've always wanted to start working in sports. I never had the opportunity. I've always worked in education. Currently I work in mental health. And so, but like working in sports was always like maybe like a pipe dream of mine. And this is like around the time where I felt like podcasts were just on the boom, like they're on the rise,
Yes.
from like 2012 to like 20, till now. Obviously, they've risen so much and it's like taken its own shape and form. But Lace 'em Up Sports, it was originally just called the Lace 'em Up Podcast. A little,
Interesting.
weird name. People were like, "Why Lace 'em Up?" I don't know. I just like I guess the double entendre of like you're gonna lace them up, right? But with that, I had I started by myself, but then I had a co-host who, he kind of, we both made it into about sports, but then it also transitioned to music, TV shows, movies. We had an episode about The Office. We had an episode about Kanye West. We had an episode about Kobe Bryant, like just different topics.
Love it.
We did that for about 2 years, and all of the episodes are still somewhere on Spotify. You guys can look them up at the Lace 'em Up podcast. But then times got busy, pandemic happened. I stopped podcasting for a long time. And then 2023 rolled around. I met up with my old partner again. We started converging into ideas. We didn't necessarily have a podcast, but we just started making content again. And our big thing was making reels. And so then we just basically just started focusing on making reels, and I started making voiceover content. And then with that, it was just like Dodger content, Laker content, basically all LA sports. And then I started making little mini documentaries. I made one about how the LA Clippers are cursed, and so that took off. I made one about the Dodgers. So this is before the Dodgers got Shohei Ohtani. And so it was called The Dodgers Almost a Dynasty because for years the Dodgers would be in the playoffs and we would lose every single year. Like we won the 2020 World Series, but people don't
It
count
didn't
that.
count COVID.
Mickey
Exactly.
Mouse ring.
Yeah. And so then um I've known Ryan for years, years and years and years. And so we've always been big wrestling fans. And for a little bit on the Lace Smith podcast, I would talk about wrestling, but it wasn't like a major feature. But wrestling has always been a huge, huge part in my life. I mean, when I talk about sports, wrestling is right there. I've been watching WWE, WWF since 1995. My first memory as a child was SummerSlam 1995, and I remember the main event was The Undertaker versus The Undertaker. It was the
Interesting.
good Undertaker versus the bad Undertaker. That was my first memory as a child. So wrestling has always been a part of my life, and so Ryan, he's always been a close friend of mine. And so I just decided, look, let's just start a podcast. We'll put it under Lace 'em Up. And then with that, I rebranded Lace 'em Up podcast into Lace 'em Up Sports Media. And so now we have, I named that, Lace 'em Up Sports Media with the Wrestling with Ryan podcast. And so
Love it.
going forward now, almost a year and a half later, it's now Wrestling with Ryan and Mike. And we have almost like over 60 episodes about pro wrestling.
That's incredible. I love that for you guys. Ryan, do you want to tell me how you got into wrestling, or should I tell my not great story of how I got into wrestling
I
first?
can, I could start off. So I got into wrestling when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I was just in kindergarten, and because I have three siblings, I had two older brothers, and one of my older brothers, he watched WWE, and he's like, "Oh, hey, you should, you should watch it." And he put it on for me, and you know, I didn't know what to think of it. And then one of the first memories I have is I remember seeing like Ric Flair before he retired. I still remember
Ooh,
seeing like D Generation X with Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And then, but out of all of the wrestlers I saw, there was really one that stood out to me. And the one that stood out to me was John Cena. And, I just wanted to learn like more about him, and I started watching it like every week. I started doing like research. I started to like gain more knowledge of it, and I've been a fan ever since. And I didn't go to my first live show until 2015. It was Hell in a Cell at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, and I remember it was Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker in Hell in a Cell. It was Roman Reigns versus Bray Wyatt in Hell in a Cell, and it was John Cena, the U.S. Open Challenge, where he lost to a returning Alberto Del Rio. And I went with my dad, and my dad had never been to a show, and my dad's like, "Why is he tearing up the ring?" Because Brock Lesnar was like tearing the canvas off the ring. My dad's like, "What's he doing?" I'm like, I don't know. And so I went to that show. It was my very first show, and it was exciting. And I started going to more like later, especially as I got older. Started working, making my own money. So yeah, so I've been a wrestling fan pretty much my entire life because I just turned 25. So I can't really imagine my life without wrestling. And so yeah, and it's like I've tried watching other like wrestling promotions, and they never quite hooked me quite like WWE has. And then of course like they don't have the greatest of all time,
We
John
don't either,
Cena.
though. Not anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And it's been a hard transition for me now that he's no longer, a wrestler, but I'm still a fan of it. I still love it. I'm still watching it every week, and I'm still keeping up with it. Like I can't picture my life without wrestling. I feel like I wouldn't have a life, or my life wouldn't be the way it is without WWE.
I have such a similar story. I started loving it since I was born. No, I'm kidding. My story is very funny. So it was last year's Rumble. My sister said, "Come on." Now, let me preface this by saying my dad would always have it on, even before my sister started liking it. But when my dad had it on, I was gravitating more toward like Sheamus and The Miz. But
That's
now,
odd.
no, it's not. They're
It's
great.
not. It's not. Those are some of the most talented guys on the roster. Very underrated.
The Miz Funko Pop with his Money in the Bank cash in sits on my desk next to my LA Knight and my Dominic Mysterio. But now that my sister got into it, she kept saying to me, "Sissy, come on, just one episode, just one episode." And I was like, "Piper, no offense, but like this is really nerdy and this is like low key stupid." So the what, like, no offense, guys. Like
No,
now I
you're
am.
no none taken, none taken. I can't tell you how many times I've had people that like, it's fake, right? I'm like, yeah, like your favorite movie.
Very
I
true.
mean, clock it.
Yeah.
But so I was watching the one day and I was scrolling on my phone and it was getting close to the Royal Rumble and I saw Dom on TV and I looked at my sister and I said, "Who's that?" And my dad goes, "Of course you'd say that." So Dom caught my eye first. And then when I saw Jay, I was like, "Who is that?" So then he won the Royal Rumble and I started watching it. And then around my birthday, so my first live event was SummerSlam of last year. And
Ooh, you
my
would.
parents surprised me and my sister with that for my birthday because my birthday's in May. So we went to both nights and we actually did get to meet Jay. And that was great. So here I am, and I feel like I've caught up really fast. Like I feel like I'm a fast track fan. It's like I did all my research. It's like I could talk about the bloodline because they're all hot. So like I minus
True.
Sammy.
Very
I
true.
I knew about all of that. I know, some of the Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio lore with Dom, but like other than that, I'm watching now in the present.